This isn't an update. I've just been able to find this video because no one wants to discuss it. Everyone evaluating a 1970s era revolver, a cheap Italian Colt knockoff, assumes it was in perfect condition, could not malfunction, and they assume that them operating the gun in a way that is considered perfect and safe would be done by a person who they also, in the same breath, will state is anti-gun and knows nothing about guns. They also state, on one channel specifically, that specifically a Pietta 1970s era cheap Italian knockoff pistol that's a single action could not do what is claimed by Alec Baldwin or anybody else, because they're experts and they know the difference between a magazine and a clip, and that's good. And on the same channel, people keep pointing out, you have a video showing you firing the same gun the same way Alec Baldwin claimed it happened, because you pulled the hammer back 1 click, 2 click, and then 1/2 click, and instead of it firing like it's supposed to, it released and went past both of the click points because the gun was dirty that day, and you said that in the video, so the video's deleted. Meaning you had a video on your channel that proved that Alec Baldwin not only is probably telling the truth, but almost exactly what happened. A dirty gun. A gun that wasn't cleaned. A gun that was used by, as everybody seems to do this, insisting on using black powder cartridges because somehow a black powder cartridge can't be substituted for one that burns cleaner with a better quality black powder, or just fucking use smokeless powder in a black powder weapon that is designed to work in a black powder weapon. You can get lower power rounds, or you can get cartridge casings that are made thicker so that you can't possibly hurt the gun. These are the same people who say you cannot load smokeless powder by simply using 1/5 or 1/6 the amount by mass, how heavy it is. The physics term, mass. Measuring the weight of it. Yes, I know we use a dipper because that's what you do after you determine the weight, but you seem to forget we can do that with other propellants. 1/5 to 1/6 the propellant mass is almost exactly correct, and that's how every company did it when they switched over to smokeless. They just loaded less powder because it's more efficient, because it doesn't have a bunch of waste material. It's also not hygroscopic, or whatever you want to use the word. It's not corrosive. And you can do this. These are the people who scream at the top of their lungs, "You're not as smart as I am," and then they'll go off and do this and blow up a gun. And yes, there is a gun channel where it shows the guy pulling the same fucking gun. He claims anyway it is. It's a 1970s era Pietta knockoff revolver. He pulls the gun out, holster, pulls the hammer back, lets loose by accident, and it goes off without him touching the trigger. He's got his finger on the side. There's another video, I can't find it anymore, I didn't bother making a recording of it. It was part of a group of videos of people doing stupid things with guns. Look up accidental gun discharge or gun idiots, and you might find a copy of it. He pulls out, same fucking gun. He's holding it in such a way that his finger can't be on the trigger because it's outside the trigger guard. He's checking the gun, and he's learned to do that. Holding it with one hand is a bad idea. Alec Baldwin said he was holding it with one hand, or at least he's indicating it. He's not saying anything clearly. You're supposed to hold it with one hand, and you pop open the little side door thingy. Yes, I'm using the wrong terms to infuriate you. And you put it to the position where it wouldn't go off, and it would let you spin the cylinder, which is what you're supposed to do. And everybody does that. Quote, everybody on the set is supposed to spin the cylinder. I was wondering why that bothered me. And then he pulls it back to firing position, and instead of it locking, it goes off, and he ends up shooting at the ground, which is why you always point it in a safe direction. Well, why do we always have to point it in a safe direction when we're not trying to fire it? Because guns don't go off by themselves. But guns are not always in perfect condition, free of dirt, grime, black powder residue, which causes this every fucking time. But somehow you guys never seem to clean your gun by just soaking it in a solvent. I've had to take guns apart and clean them because of idiots like that. So this guy has a video on his channel showing him literally pulling an Alec Baldwin, we're going to call it, and then glossing it over, and then deleting the video because it proves that he's full of shit. Alec Baldwin spends 4 years making fun of your favorite president. These are the same YouTube channels that claim that bump stocks can't do what bump stocks do. Facts are not relevant. Truth isn't relevant. I want to win an argument. I'm going to fight like hell. And make sure your vote doesn't count by literally smashing windows into Congress. But that's not terrorism. Threatening to kill the vice president openly. That's not terrorism. I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off, which is a classic statement people have made a lot of times. Some guns are made to where it's mechanically impossible for this to happen, no matter what you do with the gun, because you have to physically pull the trigger for it to not block something, but to put something into position to where it can go off, except if that tab breaks and it's up there and it always works. Here is the firing pin. If the gun is never supposed to fire any real rounds, cut the fucking firing pin off. Here's the hammer spur that sticks out the back. Don't hold the trigger down and fan it. Why? Because if you don't hold it down totally tight, it'll allow a little bit of contact with the part you're cycling by fanning the gun, and it will grind down the notches that make the safety notches exist. Not like somebody in the last year, or maybe the day before when they weren't supposed to be using this gun, sat there and just fanned the fuck out of it, which is one... If you fan a gun, well, you can easily do that. Have you torn apart your gun? Used a microscope and a micrometer and go-no-go gauges, they do exist, and tested whether or not you're full of shit. Have you ever had to sit down with a pretty girl nail file with diamond grit on it, cleaning up the notch because some asshole fucked his gun up to the point that it's packed full of God knows what, and also used black powder? Well, you have to use black powder. No, you don't. You can use clean-burning propellant that isn't quite smokeless and isn't quite black powder, and it'll work just fine. You want the smoke and discharge and the big poof of smoke because you're playing cowboy. I call it playing cowboy, not cowboy action shooting. I call it playing cowboy. You know how many times a year a cowboy action shooter has something like this happen? Never, because if they're competent, they know that it's going to happen. Take the fucking thing apart and clean it. What kind of firearm material is used as a substitute for real cartridges on set for effect? Black powder rounds. Every armorer is taught dismantle and clean. Do they do it? Not all of them. I'll do a function check. Okay, did you pull the hammer back between the notched points to see if it slips past because that indicates wear and tear? No. Did you make sure that the spring is taut, that it isn't packed with crap? You have to use a specific way of either insulating everything so it doesn't get full of dirt and the grease doesn't turn into glue, or you don't. You don't know what you're doing? How many of you are critiquing me and typing below that I don't know what I'm talking about? Okay, you have a channel talking about it. I have channels talking about literally making guns from scratch. I have content on my channel of me exploring these details. I might do a video on how to clean Alec Baldwin's gun and call it How to Clean Alec Baldwin's Gun, and then ... you idiots. This is identical. I was guessing at it, but this was identical. Not to what was said before about him pulling the gun and it just going off. He said that he had the hammer back. This is identical to the negligent discharge, or accidental discharge, you have to decide which, that happened on Lunker's TV YouTube channel with Demolition Ranch channel visiting, doing a collab, where they were pulling back the hammer on a Thompson Center, and it did the same fucking thing. Totally different conditions. That was caused by the interlinking and locking mechanism doing something specific with a specific set of sequences of what they did. They had to basically, it was like unlocking a level in a video game, but they did it, and it went off. And would have killed somebody if you hadn't been pointing it in a safe direction. And I will link to that video and piss people off. This is identical to one of the methods for a gun like this to go off, period, full stop. There's a dozen things that can cause this. Mostly it's dirt buildup and wear and tear, but it can also be caused by it being a really poor design in the get-go. The reason these weren't made after the 1800s is they weren't as good. 1911s are really good guns. They're a semi-auto. They're really cool. They have defects too. Not every gun's perfect. Again, all evaluations are assuming a weapon that's 50 years old, at least that's the assertion by one channel. He says he's an expert. This 50-year-old revolver that's a single action, which is usually the most reliable revolver you can get, it has to be in perfect condition, even though he has a video on his channel showing his wasn't, and it doing the same thing. Can't malfunction. And you can't blame the armorer who's supposed to keep all the live rounds offset. And no, a blank cartridge is not a live round. Please, let's not pussyfoot around this anymore. And we're going to blame the actor But we're going to totally ignore that the real reason is that you didn't like that he criticized your favorite president for several years. And he's anti-gun. He says he's anti-gun. He wants gun control. And somehow, this is a gun control advocate who's supposed to be an expert in guns. All of a sudden, you guys are making this assertion. This is like people claiming that Stephen Paddock could not fire a bump stock and have it actually work. Well, he's getting tired or something. He couldn't get tired. Guns don't work that way. The gun broke. He didn't get the great gun that can tolerate being fired 100 rounds at pseudo-full auto. Fully semi-automatic. Gun channels that literally lied about the nature of guns because they're afraid of regulation. Again, the least rate... Are you a gun advocate? Are you in favor of the right to keep and bear arms? Okay, I'm in favor of the right to make, keep, and bear arms as being your basic line of functionality. The least regulatable gun is a 12-gauge shotgun that's a pistol grip only. It has fewer regulations, and most of the country doesn't even know how to regulate them at all. And it's a single break action. Just a single shot break action. You can also make a slide action, or get a real pump action. You know, Mossberg. Hand wave. Not the shockwave, no. And you can learn how to make these and ruin the gun industry in the United States and make people angry with you and really be a patriot, because that's actually part of one of the things. You might want to look up history. Or you could advocate for being afraid of every fucking incident involving some random person causing you to lose your gun rights and say you're not part of a cult that's paranoid. Or you could do something about this fear and make it impossible to take your guns away from you because all they find is a bunch of sections of pipe and some random pieces of equipment like a press, impactor, glass breaker, keychain. Those are your keywords for the day. Go ahead, type them in. Or you could just act like the NRA is going to help you and protect you. That always works. Appeal to authority. Alec Baldwin is not going to be able to take your guns from you because the country is filled with more guns than people. No one's going to pay attention to the law if you make a law that's unfair. Next. Claiming Alec Baldwin, an anti-gun guy, is supposed to have the expertise to double-check a gun that had gone through apparently 3 or 4 checks and still got a cartridge in it. Not blaming the armorer. If Donald Trump shot somebody on set, none of you would blame him. Prove me wrong. Evaluate it, but substitute Donald Trump and make a video of him shooting somebody. I mean it. I devil dog shit dare you. Are you just defending Alec Baldwin? Yes, I am. That's all I'm doing. He's totally my favorite actor. That's totally it. No, he's just another random actor. He's a good actor. He's fun. But I have a teeny bit of knowledge of this. But I double check this stuff. And when I find people critiquing him who have done the same thing, that can't happen. Again, I'll leave a link to a video of someone doing this. I'll even include the time stamp in the video. I put it in the video. Nobody's going to see it. He pulled an Alec Baldwin. This is years ago. A single action or even double action pistol or any kind of weapon can have something go wrong with it. Maybe it was shot a lot and not cleaned. Maybe it's wore out. Maybe it's just a shitty knockoff. Cheap Italian Colt knockoff. Did you know that this exact occurrence happened on a couple of channels using the Walmart 12-gauge shotgun, and they sent it back and got a new one? It's the same thing. They pulled back the hammer and it went off because it didn't catch. Because they fiddled with the trigger. Because the lawyers make the trigger heavy so it'll always catch. That's one of the many reasons they make it a heavy trigger. Yeah, the guy who did a trigger job had to send it back. He sent it back with the trigger job still done. Sent it back to the factory and told them don't do that again. He still did another trigger job. He made a lighter trigger, which meant it didn't catch all the time. He didn't do it right. His fault. Who are you going to blame? Walmart? The company in Slovenia that made it? Or the guy who dicked with it? Who are you going to blame here? Alec Baldwin, who's operating the gun, but doesn't own it, doesn't clean it, and doesn't make sure it's good? Or the person whose job is to do all of those things? Guns don't kill people, people keep people. Even if the gun is at fault, we have to blame the person. And we have to blame the person we don't like. That's all I'm going to say about it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. But yeah, you can say I'm biased. Make your gun. Bye.